Good afternoon. I realize we all just ate lunch, so if you do fall asleep, I might take your picture and tweet it and hashtag Android Summit 2017. So if you wake up, go check that to see if I got you or not. And if I stop, that's why. But otherwise, I'm going to try and keep it interesting. We're all here to learn, so I understand that. I'm very interactive. If something I say is not clear, or if I'm wrong and you want to tell me, raise your hand, speak up, don't be shy. I'm not shy. I'm Travis. So that's me. There's my Twitter handle, @TravisHimes. Short version of my history. I've been a software developer for 15, Android developer for 6 years. I work at Drama Fever, now currently called Warner Brothers Digital Labs. But I've been telling everybody the point of this talk is how to be a better lazy developer. I'm lazy. It says Drama Fever. I'll update it when my boss tells me to, or I get an email, or maybe never. So we are hiring. It's a great company. They let us do cool stuff like come give talks to share with other developers. Find me later if you're interested. In case you didn't catch it, I'm lazy. I consider that a good trait of a good developer, is somebody who's lazy. So Kelly said it earlier. If you have to do something over and over again, you might find yourself getting frustrated. Kelly didn't say that, actually. I think Matt did? I heard it earlier today. Cody said it. I apologize. Cody said it. His mentor told him, if you have to do it twice, you should have done it once and then automated it. I like to live by the rule of 3. If you do something once or twice, all right, the third time you have to do it, stop doing it. Go back, teach your computer how to do it, because I'm human, I'm fallible, I'm good at breaking stuff. The computer, once I get the computer working, I can just run the script and it'll just do it. I don't have to worry about it. Maybe type some keys, go get some coffee. It's done when I come back. That's what I'm suggesting. So I have alligator fighter. I consider myself an alligator fighter, but I just say that because who likes dealing with those big hairy problems in code? When something comes up, you look at it, you go, oh, great. I'm happy to take those on. Why not? Keep it interesting. So Jenkins and Git, our team moved to using Jenkins as our CI tool. Nobody really wanted to fight with that alligator. I'm happy to be that guy. I did. Same with Git. Usually we end up in weird Git situations, and I'm one of the first people that people come and ask, so help me through this in Git. Or just a matter of you're looking at a problem and you go, all right, why? What is going on here? How is that possible? Those are the things that I like to dig into and try and figure out, this is a really neat problem. That's cool. Let's crack it open and dig in and figure out why, what's broken and how it got there, and how we do what we want it to do. So one of the things I did early on in my career, when I first started Java development, I signed up for a co-op. I walk in on my first day, and the architect on the team goes, all right, how much Java do you know? I go, I've been using C++ and JavaScript and HTML. He hands me a Java book. All right, how much Unix? He hands me a Unix book. He comes back a week later, and they let me loose and start breaking stuff. So there was a big problem that I like to tout about. 3 senior developers on the team had given it a shot, and they couldn't get this thing working. I worked at it for a while. I didn't get it done fast, but I got it done. The customer's using the version that works now the way they want it to. They undo order edits. I can tell you that story later. It takes a lot of time, so I'll gladly tell you the story, but not right now. We recently had something come up with Android where Dagger was given this weird error when you try to start the app. And my teammate came to me and he said, what's going on? I don't know. Can you help me work through this? I'm no Dagger expert by any means, but again, we cracked it open. I started commenting stuff out and only giving certain things to Dagger, and we managed to figure out what it was that was causing it. Look back through, we figured out that we were trying to instantiate something, or we were trying to generate or create something with Dagger that wasn't available yet to create. So it was causing this whole crash loop backwards. And Dagger's errors are not very intuitive. It's just something fun you have to fight with. So I consider myself a jack of all trades and a master of none. And does anybody know the rest of that quote? So the rest of the quote goes, but often better than master of one. So yeah, I'm not a master at anything, but I'm happy to take stuff on and try it, figure out, learn it, break it, try to put it back together. It works like 95% of the time. So the whole point of today's talk is to get you to the point where you're working on something and somebody comes over and says, all right, I'm sick of doing this again, can you help me with this? And you can go, sure, and make them do this. So, to be clear, it's not like crafty code that's hard to read but does the thing and just works. It's, how'd you do that? Show me again. So I want to help everybody look for opportunities to become a better developer, make your life easier, make your stuff more repeatable and less error prone. My first suggestion is, if you don't know them, learn Unix or Linux tools. So just quick show of hands, who here knows grep? OK. Sorry, take a step back. Who here does their development on a Windows machine? OK. A couple of you. That can be forgiven. But there are tools like Cygwin. Windows has got shell scripting tools. But most of the time, I work on a machine that has some form of Unix on it. So I saw a couple of hands for grep. Grep is a way to look at files and read things about them. So you can write programs where the computer will, if you need something, you can set it up so the computer will go dig through a bunch of files a lot more quickly than a person could and find information and show you that information. If you learn grep, you can get creative with it and you quickly find things that might not be obvious. So what about sed? Hands for sed? OK. Fewer hands, but sed lets you actually change things. So you can set up sed programs like, for example, if you're working with a designer, and this is to Kelly's point earlier, if you're working with a designer and the designer gives you these images, but the directories are named wrong or something, and you can't use a vector graphic because they're multiple colors or something else, you can use sed to rename a group of them all at once so that you don't have to go and just click the thing, click it again, type in the new directory name, hit enter, then go find the next one. So mouse usage is ballistic. It's not necessarily accurate. You're going to take more time. And if you know sed well enough, you can write a sed script quick and pipe it through a couple of commands and just rename all the things, do some adjustments based on the naming scheme that you've got, and then you've got your directories. You can copy your files. You can paste them. Or you could just write a bash script that'll do all that for you. So assuming the designer gives you, the format of directories you're going to get from your design team, you can write a bash script, which I've written for my process because our design team always gives us the same files in the same directory structure. And that bash script, I move into the directory, I type cp-res, and I hit enter, and it descends into the child directories based on the directory it's in, grabs the files, moves them to the correct directory, and then I just open up Android Studio again, or I switch back to Android Studio and refresh my Drawables directories, and I'm good to go. Now I've got a bunch of assets, so I'm never dragging files around. I've written a couple of scripts that I get the zip file from the designer, run the script, and then I've got my assets. I'm good to go. So that's to my point. I'm error prone with a mouse. The computer is going to do the same thing every time. What else? Awk lets you do the similar. So grep is for looking, sed is for changing in line, and then awk is like superpowered sed. You can do a bunch of different stuff, read through a file, make a bunch of changes. We'll come back to different things that sed and awk can do. Command line. So again, I prefer the command line. I always have a terminal window open on my machine. There are a bunch of tricks that you learn using the command line. If you made a mistake in the last command, I'm bad at typing, so I make mistakes. Maybe I used the wrong letter, wrong word, wrong command, didn't put a space between commands, whatever. You can edit parts of the last command. If you use the caret character, it lets you search for part of the last command and then replace it with another set of characters. So if you typed git, G-E-T, when you wanted to do a git update, so you type G-E-T space update, and it says, all right, I don't know what git is. Your computer comes back and says that. You can say, oh, caret E, caret I, enter. It'll take the last command, replace the E with the I, and then run that command. Now you've got your git update. Now it's pulling down data from git. If you know you typed a command and you're looking for it and you're trying to figure out what it was, I know it was git, but I don't remember what that git command was. you can just type up, sit there and hit up, 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 or you can do a Control R to reverse search your history for commands. So you can type Control R and then you start typing the command, and it'll propose different commands that fulfill those characters. Sometimes it takes me a couple of tries to get things right, so I have my history set up so it's only a single entry, so I don't have multiple, like a series of the same command, if I'm doing something over and over and over again. That's the difference. I won't get multiple entries in history. I'll only have one instance of that command. And then sometimes maybe you're doing something where you're putting in a password, or you're using a script and you're supplying a password to this script, and you don't want that password to actually be in your history. Should you go looking through it, you can delineate to this shell that this command doesn't get recorded in history. Once I clear the screen, this won't be visible. So you run the command, you clear your terminal, and now it's not in your history, but you've got the benefit of the script. Man pages. This isn't programming. Man pages man is short for manual. They tell you what the tool does, what the script does, what the point of it is, all the different arguments you can give it, and how you can proceed from there. So I develop on a Mac. There are different package managers on different versions of Linux and Unix. Brew is one that does not come with it, but is easily installed. It's a great package manager for Mac. I suggest it. But wait, there's more. There we go. So learn shell scripting. Remember how I said I had that script for moving files? Because I get tired, like I said, rule of 3. If I do something a couple times, I get cranky. I take a couple of minutes and I go write a shell script for it, because I'm not as accurate with the mouse as I am with the keyboard, and I'm not as accurate with the keyboard as the computer is. So once I teach the computer how to do it, I can stop caring about it. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I just let it go. So copying, renaming, moving, all great things to do with a shell script. Adjusting. If you get assets, there are different programs that you can use. Maybe you have to do the same thing. If you find yourself doing the same thing more than a couple times, seek it out. There might be a really easy way to automate it, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. You can just make the change. Input. So like I said, if you type GET because you're thinking in English, not in computer, when you want to update your get branch or you want to push, you can write a shell script in the form of an alias that will replace GET with GIT. Or maybe any vowel that lives between G and T, you probably meant get. You can do that. It's up to you. So my bashrc file, come on, really? My bashrc file is pretty long. I've got a link to it at the end of the slides, shortened link, but just stuff that I find myself doing over and over again, and if it frustrates me, it gets an alias, or it gets an alias, a function in the bashrc file, or if it's something that I might do more than a couple times and I need to get really interesting with it, I usually just write a shell script for it. I have my own bin directory that my bashrc file puts on my path. So, because who's going to set that every time? If you go through the trouble to write these, you're going to want to be able to reference them later. So email it to yourself or create a gist, which is actually how that link works that I'm going to share later on. My get tricks. I seriously have that alias that G, any of the vowels, T, means GIT. So how many times a day, I'm assuming there are some people who use get here. How many times do any of you type GIT space STATUS? Has anybody typed that a couple times a day? I don't type that. I type GS because I know what GS means. I want to know the get status of my get branch. So I type GS and I hit enter. It knows the alias GS means get status. Why spend all those extra characters? Same thing, anything that you do that you want to do again and again and you just don't want to think as hard about, write an alias for it if it's your system. So anybody here moved around directories in Bash? Everybody knows, like, how do you go up a directory in Bash? Somebody call it out. Or in shell. CD space ... So that's 5 characters that you have to type. How do you go up 3 directories? cd space dot dot slash dot dot slash dot dot. I type up space 3 because I have a path where I am in the directory structure from home. So if I want to go up 3 directories, I just type up 3. And if I wasn't paying enough attention or I missed, like maybe I'm really deep in the editing the nth interface of some implementation of something, and I guessed that it's 5 directories up, and I missed, I can type no 6. So I type no 6. No is cd minus, which takes you back to the directory you were in, and then 6. The second part of no is it takes that command and applies it to up. So just like simple stuff like that, like it turns it into this weird conversation so that if anybody's sitting watching me work at my terminal, I'm moving around just navigating directories, it looks like a conversation, but at the same time, like I've typed 4 characters, or all right, 6 characters, and I've gone up a bunch of directories, come back, gone up different directories so that I can type cd minus to go back to the depth that I was at. Quiet logs. Anybody here who's run logcat on, I'm not going to name a manufacturer, anybody here who's run logcat on a manufacturer has seen that there's a lot of logs. So some manufacturers have all these logs that you see the same tag again and again and again. ADB lets you quiet down logs that you don't want. So you could type ADB logcat *:s. You won't get any logs, but then you can turn on the ones you want. If you're working with something and you just want to see the logs, but there's a lot of noise, you type that tag :s. Quiet logs is a ADB space giant pile of tags :s, but then I can connect to my device and run quiet logs, and I'll only see logs that aren't caught by that filter. So it's better logging with, what, I'm not counting that, 9 characters? Everybody's clear data on your app, right? You have to scroll down, settings. Clear data is a command. You can do that via ADB in the shell. Airplane, what do you think it does? First guess. Turns on airplane mode, I heard. Because I have to use my fingers, just a big fat mouse. I have to use my finger and tap some things. I can turn on airplane mode. So I can write, I don't know, login. Has anybody here work on an app that you have to log into? So you install your app on a new device and you have to log into it? Come on, hands. You all had lunch. OK. All right. So who likes using their big fat pointers on the keyboard? Yeah, there's no hands. Because we can all type on a keyboard a lot better with our fingers when the keys are like this big as opposed to this little UI thing that we have to try and click. So one of the things that you can do, you can automate sending strings to the device. So I know that I have my username, my password. I know on our login screen that if you hit the tab key on the keyboard, it sends you to the next input field. So I've written a script called login that I type login and I hit enter in my shell, and it enters my username, it hits tab, it enters my password, and tab advances me 2 tab targets, and then space clicks the button so it submits. So I just get to the login screen, and I type login on my computer and hit enter, and then just watch the device, and then the device is logged in. Then I can go back to using my big pointer and scrolling around doing whatever I need to. But I've not typed my username and password on a device that I've had USB connected in quite a long time, just because the computer's more accurate at it. Anybody here merged with Git? All right, so you like those .rig files? You get a merge conflict, you've got the original files, and then you've got the ones that you've now deconflicted and everything. You've still got those big red pile of files at the bottom that says, I don't know what to do with these, they're hanging out, I don't know where they go in Git, I don't recognize them, what do you want to do with them? rmrig just looks through, deletes everything that's a .rig file. So if I have any merge conflicts and I don't clean up my rig files, I can just run that script and it gets rid of them. So does anybody here have any ideas for things that you might do with shell scripting? Just listening to my brain dump of things that I've done? You're being too shy. Nobody? What's that? Yep, that's a good one. So if you anything that you do a couple times a day, if you write a alias for it or a shell script, you'll save that time. And it's minor, but if you do this a lot and you make it part of your workflow, you'll end up finding a bunch more time to do more interesting things. So tips and tricks for shell scripting. Google it. I'm not the first person doing shell scripting. There's a bunch of people that have done shell scripting. There's plenty of great tips out there. Echo it first. If you're going to write a shell script where you're going to make some changes to your file system, you're going to move stuff, you're going to delete anything, you're going to rename it, don't do it just blind. Don't hope you got the command right. Echo it. It echoes, you put the word echo in front of your command, it'll print out the command so you can see if all your substitutions are working and everything else. And then that way, when you're done with it, you just remove echo, and then you're good to go. If anybody's ever come back to something after working on something else, write a usage statement just so you remember how it works next time you come back to deal with it. And then if anybody else has any tips and tricks, please share them with me. I'd love to hear them. So just real quick, again, I'm just driving home the point here about me being bad at doing the same thing repeatedly, and the computer's really good at it. If you've got a spreadsheet, so you get a spreadsheet from design or product, or you've got a spreadsheet with a bunch of different data in it, say build flavors. Spreadsheets are really just comma-separated or character-separated value lists. So you can export it to a CSV, put that CSV on your drive, and now you've got sed, awk, and grep, not so much grep, but you've got sed and awk at your command. You can, what I did was I exported it to CSV. I did a lot of sed, echo, and awk work and figured out exactly the commands that I needed to parse through the data. And what I did was I took that, eventually parse through the data, pull apart the parts I need, organize it into what looks like Gradle syntax, and dump it into a file. Then copy that file, paste it into my Gradle file. Now I've got all the build flavors I need with all their all the different API keys assigned to the right value, because I know I'm not good at copying and pasting. I know I'm really not good at typing and matching everything perfectly, but the shell was great at it. So the only other thing is consider the scale. Don't do that for like 4 rows in a table, or 4 rows in a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet had like 100 rows in it, but it worked. It was I feel that it was a better use of my time to write this script, to dump it into a text file that I could copy and paste and have no mistakes, than it was to use copy and paste from the spreadsheet and dump it into and paste it into the Gradle file. So I'm assuming some people here work with APIs, interact with them. As a developer, you're working on the device, you interact with those APIs. How many people that work with the device side APIs actually control, like do the work on the server side as well? Okay. 3 people in the room do, and so you've got fewer problems. You still have to communicate, but most of the time, as a device developer, I don't cover the API side. I work on the device side. So there's all of this interaction, communication, and sometimes lack of communication. What happens is things change, and not everybody's notified, or some people get the message and other people don't. But if you miss the memo and things just start breaking, you might not know until your app's in production at the worst case, hopefully sooner, because you test, right? So you get weird, you think something's working, then later on somebody QAs it and says, well, this doesn't work at all. This person's crazy. So you can write a bunch of tests that verify that the API is doing what it's supposed to, or what the people on the API team told you it would do. If you're working with something that's a special case, you can build into your app there are different ways that you can approach getting the user into that special case. You can build into the app that the app always gets the same response, so that the API, or that your code can parse it and then do the thing, and then you can test it, but it only works in that one app, and that's the only thing that works. Or it only works in that one build, and that's the only thing that works. You could fake some of the data coming back sometimes, like maybe there's a special gesture that does the thing, and then now the app does the thing when under these conditions. Or you could use a tool called Charles, or any other man-in-the-middle tool, but you could intercept the response and monkey with it to make it work the way that you want it to. Just for testing specific stuff, most notably in my history was intercepting the response, or intercepting the request, going back to the server, to pretend that I was in a different country in which I've never visited, but the app behaves differently under certain conditions when it's running in that country. So I needed to intercept that and monkey with it, but I only wanted to do it sometimes, and Charles was the path of least resistance rather than hard coding the request or the response or anything else. It's got a free trial. I think it's $50. In my opinion, it's totally worth it because it saves you. You can literally monkey with anything in that request. It works for HTTPS. You install a certificate on your phone, and then your phone Forevermore tells you that your data is probably not secure, but I know I put that certificate on that device. I'm comfortable with that. You can take the certificate off, and then it stops warning you about it, but then you can't intercept the HTTPS. You can rewrite the response. You can rewrite the request. You can just monkey with the data in any direction. You can only monkey with certain requests. Charles is great. Give it a shot. That's a whole other subject of a whole other talk. Taking it down a notch, curl lets you run from the command line, make API calls, make RESTful calls. So if you've ever worked with push notifications, you know that something happens, and then a call is made to Google's push servers. Curl is a great way to make that call. So the device could log its client ID or its whatever they're calling it now, instance ID, and then you can make the call. You've got the authorization key because you talked to the API team. You put in the right set of things. Actually, what you do is you set up a little bash script that takes arguments that are those things, and then you've got your arguments file, but you can set it up so that you need a push notification on your device. You run this command, and then the curl call is made to the Google server, and as long as that succeeds, your device is going to be buzzing when the device is notified that it's got this notification. Postman is a much prettier UI that I think it's a separate application now. The first version was just a app that you could add to Google Chrome, but Postman does all that as a much nicer UI. Curl, you're literally typing into the command line, but you can script curl with shell scripts. So I use Android Studio. Android Studio has a bunch of different tools that you can use for collaboration. Has anybody ever been working in a pair or working with someone trying to help them solve something, and you're trying to direct them where to go, but they don't have line numbers turned on, so you're going up, go up a couple lines. No, too far, go back down. Turn on line numbers. Request that everybody you work with does. It'll make it much easier to say, please go to line 17 and change the to TEH. Mark Scheel gave a talk at DroidCon Boston. Android Studio is wicked pissa. And one of the things that forgive my terrible Boston accent, I apologize if I've offended anybody. Probably have. He pointed out find action, because you know that Android Studio can do this thing, but you don't know what it's called or which menu it's under because it's got all those top menus, and then there are nested menus under menus under menus. Command-Shift-A, and then you start typing, just describing what it is you're trying to get the IDE to do. It's really got some interesting things that you can do, and like if you find yourself about to do something and you think, well, this would be a great IDE tool, let me see if they have it. They probably do. So Command-Shift-A, that's a keyboard shortcut. Learn keyboard shortcuts, because again, picking things out of the menu takes time, and if you know the keyboard shortcut, you can just type it with your fingers and you're good to go. There is a plugin that tells you when you did something via menu that has a keyboard shortcut. There's also a plugin that shows a keystroke that you entered that was a keyboard shortcut should you be working with someone, so that you're not just sitting there wildly crafting away on the keyboard and the IDE is doing all the stuff, and the person that you're working with is just, well, you get the stare, but then nobody learns anything. So the plugins, I believe, are on the next slide. Yep. Key Promoter is the one that tells you when you are doing something via menu that you could do via plugin. Keycaster it's not a plugin, it's an app. Keycaster is the one that shows the keystroke that you just entered. I'm a Vim user. I know there are Emacs users. I won't hold that against you. There are plugins for both in Android Studio, and at this point I think in Vim, so it's really hard for me to go back to using something that's not Vim enabled. Dagger is a great plugin for answering the questions of where does this come from and where is this being used. Auto is great for message bus, and since it's a bus, it's the Simpsons bus driver icon that you get on the Auto, the bus driver, on your little in the gutter. There are plenty of other plugins. I'm always happy to hear favorites. I'm always happy to learn new ones in case anybody's got a favorite. There was something on the last slide that I missed. One of the awesome things in Android Studio is it's got a great merge conflict resolution tool. So if you're running into conflicts with Git, what I usually do is I'll do the merge in the command line and then move over to Android Studio and resolve conflicts, because it's a very beautiful UI. It's really pretty smart, and it makes it easy to quickly merge the conflicts and get something working, rather than before I had this hacked up script that would collect arguments from the command line and then put them together in such a manner that it would launch P4 merge, I think. Another pretty diffing tool, but Android Studio is so much easier that I don't even use the other one anymore, and I couldn't tell you how to use it if I tried. So another thing that Kelly mentioned today was boilerplate. We all deal with boilerplate. One of the great things about Android Studio is if you find yourself doing boilerplate, you can build in templates so that you can type a couple of keys and have the tool introduce all the boilerplate for you and then let you jump around between the things that you might need to change. So the entire picture of a click list, for example, doesn't need anything other than the details, but you still have to type all that stuff out. You can hit Alt-Enter a couple times and have it fill in all the different pieces, or you can just you could set up a code template and have it generate the entire thing and then put the cursor right in the part where the interesting stuff happens. I suggest playing with templates just because you'll find something useful that you can do with them. Android Studio, the debugger is great. I debug a lot, and oftentimes what I do is I find myself in a situation and it doesn't look like the code's doing what I want it to, so I'll drop a breakpoint and then attach the debugger. It recently came to my attention that not everybody knows that you can attach the debugger to a running app as long as debug is enabled. So that's something that if you didn't know might make your life a lot better. You won't have to restart the app and then get back into the situation where things were weird. You can just attach to a running app. You can also make your breakpoints conditional. So maybe the first couple of times everything works, and then like the 10th time, for whatever reason, this thing goes awry. You can set it up. You can write code blocks that are executed that determine whether or not to actually stop this breakpoint or just let it flow. And once you've stopped, you can check to see, all right, what's the value of this thing that's deeply nested within an object? I don't have a print statement. Like I said, I just attached to a running app that I need to see why this looks like it's happening. I want to inspect this value. Oh, wait, this thing that's 3 deep is null because whatever. You can evaluate expressions. You can just write code to evaluate that expression and see what's going on so that you can figure it out. At the same time, you can set new values. If you go into something and it's on the 10th loop, but you really want to see what happens on the 6,000th, you can just set it to loop 6,000 and run it. Or you can set the value mid-iteration to 5999 and then run it to see what breaks on loop 6,000 instead of having to wait until the very end or try and catch it in some weird spot if you didn't do conditional debugging. You can also blank out values. So it's great for testing null. You can set things to null. It's great for testing null states or broken states or things not working. Debugging, in general, you can go into methods to see what they're doing, and then you can come out to see how they resolve. And there are keyboard shortcuts for that, too. So basically, in conclusion, figure out how it works. Take the toaster apart. You might learn something from it. You might not, but you'll have the experience. You'll have a better experience understanding how things go together a little bit. Don't be afraid to poke around. I'm not suggesting that anybody spend their entire day A, taking apart toasters, or B, playing with shell scripts. But if you think that you might find efficiency in doing things to save yourself work, give it a shot. It's easy to say no. It's much better if you say, let me try, let me see what I can do. And that applies to a lot of things with Android. One of them, who here has written XML Drawables? OK, so there's some XML Drawables. Those are really interesting. There's a website called I Don't Know LOL, I believe it is owned by one Dan Liu, based on a little bit of Whois work. I'm 99% sure that's Dan Liu's website, but he goes through the XML spec for XML Drawables. It's really great. You can see what you can do. If you're ever curious, all right, how do I do that thing where I have the different states, but then I want some shapes in there, and like it tells you, it's basically the way that all works. Kelly gave half my talk today this morning, but SVG Drawables, has anybody ever used Logo? Possibly as a much younger person. I did. I saw 3 other hands, or 4 other hands. So SVG is like Logo opened wide up. You can write, you give the instructions to the pointer and tell it what to do, and it does whatever you tell, and then they're infinitely scalable, because all they are is a set of instructions. It's a subset of the entire SVG spec, but sometimes if I don't have access to a designer, or I'm trying to do something that the designer's not understanding, or that I just need to get out quick, I'll open up an SVG document and open up Chrome, look at the SVG document, and then start editing the SVG document and just reload the file. I've gotten really close a lot of times to the point that I've got some handwritten SVG in production. So I don't do Bezier curves. I'm not that smart, but the SVG stuff is really neat. Poke around, check it out. It's just a text file. You can edit and do all sorts of interesting things. Be careful. On top of that, just collaborate aggressively. Share. There's always something to learn. I don't know everything. I'll be the first person to tell you I don't know everything. But there's always something that you can learn from somebody. I think that's why you're all here. Consider the audience. Consider the problem. If you go into it with the wrong attitude, it's not gonna be a great experience. But just look to learn and share your knowledge with everybody as much as you can. Nothing much here as far as, if you're having a problem, try explaining it to no one out loud. There's something about saying what you're dealing with out loud that helps make it more clear to you. That's called rubber ducking. And explaining it makes it, none of this. One of the things that I did at one company where I think a lot of us learned a lot was we had this friendly Stack Overflow competition. And it started out where we took everybody's current Stack Overflow score, and then once we had a baseline for everybody, we all went out and started answering questions. So we helped improve everybody else's knowledge, and we had this internal battle amongst ourselves of, all right, I got 10 points today, put it up. How many points are you up to? And it was just a great way. We all learned stuff. We learned new stuff about problems that we were looking at, and we all shared with each other and everybody else solutions that we had worked on. Wikis are great. They let you share information quickly. Don't be afraid to sign up for talks. You might get accepted, and then in the worst case, you have to come and talk. I don't think it's a bad situation, but push each other. Like I said, compete. See if you can get more points than anybody else on Stack Overflow. I don't know if Mark Murphy's in this room, but he's probably winning as far as anybody in the room or at the conference as far as Stack Overflow points go. But golf challenges, try and solve the problem in as few lines of code as possible. Speed challenges, have competitions for most efficient, best implementation. Language challenges, all right, everybody write this in Kotlin, everybody write this in Bash, everybody write this in Go. You might learn something. But keep it friendly. This is all just to help everybody learn. You learn new things, you learn different paradigms, different ways of doing the same thing that you might bring back to your language or to a problem that you might have been struggling with or has come up before, and then now you've got a different tool to approach the problem with. So in closing, go for the whoa. Again, not in cleverness of implementation as far as confusing, but look for that's cool. I'll remember that. Thank you. So with that, if you have questions, please ask. Don't be shy.
Hi, I didn't see a URL for your slide deck. Is there going to be one?
I apologize. There is the URL. These are all my references. I think I have the Dunno-lol. Yeah, I Dunno-lol, like I said, through careful use of Whois, I'm 99% sure that that's Dan Liu's site. So He's had that up forever. Did you have a question? Okay. All right, well, oh, there's a question.
Is there a good tool for editing shell or bash scripts specifically, or C, like in Studio where it comes autocomplete?
I've not found a good tool. So the question was, is there a good tool for editing shell scripts and bash scripts that's aware of the different things that are possible in that syntax? I've not found a good tool. I've always just used MacVim, but that's because I'm comfortable in Vim. And there is a reference, the fourth one, I believe LDP is the bash reference, but if you just search bash scripting guide, you'll find plenty of references. There's a beginner's guide, and then there's an advanced guide. And I use Google and search around until I find the appropriate section, and then read it a couple times and try something. All right, well, oh, no, one more question. What's that? Okay, this gentleman says Sublime Text is aware of bash syntax. So check it out. Now I'm going to. All right, well, thank you for your time.